Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest Beethoven Quartet Ensembles. That is, string quartets. See, I couldn't say the 5 greatest Beethoven string quartets because then you'd think I was talking about works, not players. So I very cleverly did it that way. Now, there's something very interesting about this list that I am tossing out to you as a challenge, if you want to call it that. None of these ensembles, which are indisputably the 5 greatest Beethoven quartet ensembles, are German. Not one, not a single one. Now, every German quartet worth its salt plays the Beethoven quartets, and some of them are very famous, and some of them play them extraordinarily well. I mean, really well, and I've talked about them, in my repertoire list for Beethoven quartets and whatnot. But the point I wanted to make is that great chamber playing is not a German specialty, never has been. And these groups, despite their patrimony, have absolutely no special claim to this repertoire. Why is that important? Well, it's important because especially in these days where knowledge and listening seem to be in increasingly short supply when it comes to the classics, it's very, very easy for people to adopt a PR position that somehow they're born into some tradition or something like that. And it's all crap. The whole point of classical music, particularly this music, is that it belongs to everyone. It's the special province of no one. Theoretically, it can become a specialty if you're trained in it. If you know it well and you're trained in it and you respond to it well, it becomes your specialty. So the only way, in my view, that a classic becomes a specialty is either, well, there are 2 ways. Either someone's a musical genius and they just respond to it, they play it magnificently, and that could be anybody, absolutely anybody. Or, alternately, you keep other things out. You're a specialist by way of exclusion. And I tend to prefer inclusion because our musical tradition is just so vast and so full of wonderful, yummy, juicy things. And whether they're string quartets or singers or whatever they are, you're always better off adopting a broader range of reference, of knowledge, of experience, because you can then focus on the things that you think you do especially well or prefer. So I'm just using this as a test case. And my challenge to you is I want to know who the 5 greatest German Beethoven Quartet ensembles that are German are. I know who some of them are, and we know who some of them are, but I would say, you don't have to do it. But if you're curious, if you want to, give me a list. I can think of one off the top of my head, and I think you probably could too. So the 5 greatest Beethoven Quartet ensembles are, German or not, first, the Végh Quartet with the inimitable Sándor Végh, who always had some intonation issues as a first violinist, but who nonetheless was an extraordinarily sensitive musician, both as a conductor and as a performer, and whose humanity and intensity and intelligence and lyrical fulsomeness just oozed down to all of the members of his quartet. And they did glorious Beethoven, particularly the late quartets and particularly the slow movements, which have a spiritual intensity which is unmatched in the history of quartet playing. There, go prove me wrong. Next, the Talich Quartet. The Czech quartets are an extraordinary school. They really are. It's a magnificent school of quartet playing. It's funny because Czech string players in orchestras are not known for being those rich, yummy Viennese, sort of schmoozy, tons of warmth and Gemütlichkeit and all of those things that they're supposed to have. But string quartet players, my God, are they good. The ensemble values, their sense of rhythm, their lyrical beautiful legatos. I mean, they're just a great, great school of quartet playing. And there's a whole batch of them. As many Czech quartets as there are German quartets who can do this stuff really well. There really are. And two of them are on this list. First, the Talich Quartet, which was on the Calliope label. The Végh Quartet was on Ovidis. Astray, by the way, if you can still find it, God knows. But the Talich Quartet was on Calliope, which is now La Dolce Volta. A beautiful, gorgeous, homogenized, no, not homogenized, homogeneous. Anna Russell made the difference. Just beautifully matched, wonderfully paired, excellently balanced ensemble sound, lively tempos, gorgeous, gorgeous phrasing. They really had it all. They were just amazing. And then the Juilliard Quartet. Yay! And you're going to say, he's doing it because he's American. I'm not. I'm doing it because they were great. Not only were they great, they were internationally shockingly great. They were for quartets what George Szell and the Cleveland Orchestra, was for orchestras, or Toscanini and the New York Philharmonic. They just raised the bar. In terms of technical accuracy and textual fidelity and general overall excellence. Their interpretive approach was modern. They were not obviously part of the, European tradition of, for example, the Budapest Quartet or the Hungarian Quartet. Those were the American quartets, actually. I mean, they were in America, that were, that traditionally got all the attention in the Beethoven quartets and the quartet literature generally. And then this younger generation came along, the non-romantic, but exceptionally gifted and smart chamber ensembles, and they redefined what chamber music playing could be. And the Juilliard Quartet did that. And there were a couple other quartets, too, around that time. But they were remarkable. And maybe I'm just being facetious when I suggest, but a lot of the contemporary European quartets adopted the same approach slightly thereafter. So the Juilliard Quartet is definitely on the list. The Smetana Quartet. Now, the Smetana Quartet is another one of those fabulous Czech ensembles. They are similar to the Talich, only more highly energized. They were a sort of a rhythmic, dynamic, amazing group of players. Their Beethoven Quartet series on Denon is really, really exceptional. It adopts some of the swifter tempos of the modern school, even though the players were not themselves modern, but they still have that wonderful, wonderful sense of singing, beautiful singing tone that they project, especially, again, in the slow movements of the late quartets, which are absolutely stunning. They also do great Opus 18, though. The quartets tend to be, if they're really, really great, the middle and later quartets, they're sometimes not as great at the early quartets. And if they do the early quartets really well, sometimes the late quartets are a problem. See, the issue is, frankly, that the early quartets tend to be overwritten. Beethoven was really trying too hard, and they're packed and dense, but at the same time, classical in structure and, barely out of Haydn's schoolhouse, you know what I mean? And so they're very difficult to pull off, I think. The more romantic middle quartets and later quartets with their more expansive structures and, longer breath melodies are actually easier to do well, in my opinion. That's me. Anyway, last but not least, the Quartetto Italiano. Yeah. Oh, my God, they're gorgeous. Now, they represent everything that I think great old world quartet playing should be, because they have the accuracy, they have the intonation, they have the ensemble balances, they have all the technical aplomb of the later younger groups, but they have this sort of aristocratic poise, a leisureliness that's not boring. That's just, we live in our own world and we have all the time we need to make the points we want to make. They're not notably slowish. They're just gracious and elegant and poised. The opening of the first Razumovsky Quartet, I think, has never been equaled. The cello solo and the tempo. Most players do it sort of ya da 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 da, ya da 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 da, which is lovely. It's wonderful. And the repeated note accompaniment is chuck 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 around like that. The Quartetto Italiano is ya da 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 da, ya da 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 pa 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 da, and the accompaniment is chun 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 chun. It moves. It has that pulsation, that rhythm that keeps you going, but the breadth is just entirely different. The scale is somehow larger, and oh, it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And so those are the 5 greatest Beethoven Quartet ensembles. And like I said, if you want to give me a list of 5 German ones, I would be fascinated to take a look at it. But you can also include anyone else you think deserves to be there. And I'll let you know if they do or they don't. I have no problem weighing in on this particular topic, but we'll see. We'll see what we get. Thank you all for participating. I'm having such a good time with these lists, and I know you are too. It will come to an end in a couple weeks or so. I think we'll be getting to the end, but then we'll be starting something else, which I think will be equally fun. I really do. So thanks for joining me, and take care.